In April 1940, Nazi Germany invaded Norway, pulling this small Nordic nation into the chaos of World War II. The years that followed were marked by resistance, collaboration, and immense suffering. Thousands of Norwegians were killed, while more than 80,000 fled the country, among them political leaders, military officers, and intellectuals like Nobel laureate Sigrid Undset. Economically, the situation was disastrous. The moment Norway was occupied, it lost nearly all its major trading partners. Germany became its primary market, but even that could not fill the gap. Worse, German authorities seized the majority of Norway's production, leaving its people with just 43% of what they produced. Scarcity, rationing, and uncertainty defined everyday life. From this position of weakness, few could have predicted Norway's future. Yet today, the picture could not be more different. Norway is one of the richest nations on Earth, with a GDP per capita of around $86,800, higher than the United States, Germany, and even the United Kingdom. Despite being geographically smaller than the US state of California, and with a population of just 5.5 million people, Norway commands a $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund, the largest of its kind in the world. It consistently ranks at the very top of the Human Development Index, Democracy Index, and Press Freedom Index, while also being among the happiest and healthiest nations. Few countries of such modest size wield such extraordinary wealth, stability, and global influence. The question is, how did a once war-scarred, resource-poor nation reinvent itself into a global model of prosperity? When we think of Norway today, we often imagine breathtaking fjords, advanced cities, and one of the highest standards of living in the world. But this wasn't always the case. In fact, for most of its history, Norway was poor, rural, and struggling to survive in a harsh northern climate. To understand how Norway became one of the richest nations on Earth, we must first look back at its long and difficult past. During the Viking Age, Norway was the poorest of the three Scandinavian kingdoms, the others being Denmark and Sweden. While the Vikings of Norway were known across Europe for their seafaring, raiding, and trading, the reality at home was much harsher. Norway's rugged mountains, thin soil, and long winters made large-scale farming difficult. Most people survived through a mix of small-scale agriculture, fishing, hunting, and animal husbandry. Famine was rare, but scarcity was constant. Norwegian farmers grew hardy grains like oats, rye, and barley, and raised sheep, goats, pigs, and cattle. In the far north, the indigenous Sami people lived a nomadic lifestyle based on reindeer herding. Fishing along the coast was both a lifeline and a danger. Storms, cold seas, and primitive boats often claimed lives, but species like cod, herring, and halibut were abundant and would later become the backbone of Norway's export economy. One important turning point came in the 18th century with the introduction of the potato. Promoted by both priests and the Danish crown, the potato quickly became a staple that provided reliable calories and helped stabilize the food supply. Despite these improvements, Norway remained a land of scarcity. Self-owning farmers formed the backbone of society, but as the population grew in the 18th and 19th centuries, land became scarce. Many families were pushed into poverty, forced to become tenant farmers, working for others. Opportunities were limited, and as a result, massive waves of Norwegians emigrated to North America. In fact, after Ireland, Norway experienced the highest percentage of population loss due to emigration in Europe. By the mid-1800s, hundreds of thousands of Norwegians had left in search of better lives overseas. Industrialization came relatively late to Norway compared to much of Europe. Mining towns like Kongsberg, Røros, and Løkken had operated for centuries. But large-scale industry didn't truly take root until the mid-19th century. Textile mills were among the first modern factories, soon followed by the rise of banking and entrepreneurship. These industries attracted rural workers displaced from agriculture. Since wages in factories were higher than in farming, rural populations began to shrink. Cultivated land declined, and a new urban working class slowly emerged with its own neighborhoods, culture, and political movements. Cities like Oslo and Bergen expanded, yet Norway remained far more rural than industrial giants like Britain or Germany. By the early 20th century, Norway's long coastline fostered one of the world's leading shipping industries, which became vital for global trade and wealth creation. At the same time, its abundance of rivers enabled the development of hydroelectric power, with the first major hydropower plants built in the early 1900s. This cheap and renewable energy quickly became the backbone of energy-intensive industries such as aluminum and fertilizer production, giving Norway a competitive edge in global markets. Though the country still lagged behind many of its European neighbors in urbanization and industrial scale, its industrial base was steadily strengthening, laying the foundation for future prosperity. As we already mentioned, World War II was a devastating chapter in Norway's history. The Nazi occupation left the nation scarred, its economy weakened, and its political stability shaken. Yet, the post-war years became a decisive turning point. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Einar Gerhardsen and the Labour Party, Norway embraced a social democratic model that transformed society. Sweeping reforms were introduced, income distribution was flattened, universal health care was created, education was expanded, and retirement and disability benefits were guaranteed. To finance this welfare state, taxes were raised significantly, and by the 1975 to 1980 period, Norway's total tax revenue reached approximately 38.2% of GDP, one of the highest rates globally at the time. Luxury goods such as cars, alcohol, and tobacco were taxed heavily to discourage wasteful consumption and to fund social services. This system did more than just provide social benefits. It created a high-trust society where citizens believed that wealth was shared fairly. In many ways, this post-war social contract laid the groundwork for the Norway we recognize today, prosperous, egalitarian, and resilient. In 1969, everything changed for Norway. That year, on the Ekofisk field in the North Sea, just 200 miles southwest of Stavanger, explorers struck oil. It was one of the largest offshore oil fields ever discovered at the time, producing high-quality crude with enormous commercial potential. For a relatively small, poor nation, the find was nothing short of transformative. The timing could not have been more crucial. Globally, the late 1960s was a period when oil was becoming the lifeblood of modern economies. Western Europe and the United States were heavily dependent on imported oil for industrial growth, electricity, and transportation. At the same time, political instability in major oil-producing regions like the Middle East and Venezuela meant that supply was often uncertain. Countries that discovered oil without strong institutions often fell prey to corruption, inflation, and social unrest. Norway, however, was uniquely prepared. By the late 1960s, it had a mature democracy, a strong welfare state, and high public trust. This political stability allowed Norway to manage its oil wealth prudently. Unlike Venezuela, which had vast reserves but suffered economic mismanagement, or Nigeria, which faced corruption and inequality, Norway avoided the so-called resource curse by implementing careful policies from the start. Heavy taxation of oil companies, significant state ownership in key fields, and strict rules ensuring that surplus revenues were invested abroad rather than oversaturating the domestic economy. The greater Ekofisk area, including Ekofisk, Eldfisk, Tor, and Embla, eventually produced over 6 billion barrels of oil equivalent. This generated roughly 2,500 billion Norwegian kroner, approximately $227.5 billion in value, of which 1,200 billion Norwegian kroner came in taxes. The oil boom transformed Norway into Western Europe's largest petroleum producer, pumping about 2 million barrels of oil equivalent per day. Oil and gas now account for around 40% of Norway's exports, and the revenues have been strategically invested in the government pension fund Global, which today is worth over $1.7 trillion. Oil's significance went beyond economics. During this era, energy security was a top priority for industrialized nations. By producing its own oil, Norway ensured domestic energy stability and became a reliable supplier for Europe at a time when global demand was skyrocketing. Unlike countries like Venezuela or Nigeria, which struggled with mismanagement and inequality, Norway turned its oil wealth into a long-term, collective national asset, benefiting both current and future generations. In 1990, Norway made a bold decision that would change the way the world looks at oil wealth. Instead of spending all the money from its North Sea oil, the country created the government pension fund Global, now the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. By 2025, the fund had grown to over $1.7 trillion, which is more than $300,000 for every Norwegian citizen. The key to this success was Norway's careful planning and long-term thinking. The fund invests in a wide range of assets, stocks, bonds, and real estate across the globe. It follows strict ethical rules, avoiding companies involved in tobacco, severe environmental damage, or human rights violations. Transparency is also a priority. Norges Bank Investment Management publishes detailed reports so everyone can see how the fund is performing. Compared to other countries, Norway stands out. China's sovereign wealth fund is much lower at around $1.3 trillion, and it mainly holds foreign reserves. Abu Dhabi's fund manages about $1.7 trillion, and Saudi Arabia's public investment fund is around $913 billion. Norway's fund is unique because it combines size, ethical investing, transparency, and a direct benefit to citizens. The fund helps Norway in many ways. It supports the welfare system, funding healthcare, education, and social security. It provides economic stability during downturns and ensures future generations will benefit from the country's oil wealth. Norway's wealth from oil is only part of the story. Equally important is how the country uses that wealth. The Norwegian government combines oil revenues with taxes to fund one of the most comprehensive welfare systems in the world. Healthcare in Norway is built on the principle of universal access. Funded primarily through taxes, it guarantees that all residents receive medical care without financial hardship. In 2020, Norway spent approximately 8.9% of its GDP on public health, well above the regional average of 4.9% and the income group average of 5.3%. By comparison, the United States spends about 17.3% of its GDP on healthcare, but coverage is uneven and millions remain underinsured. Norway's system ensures high-quality services for all citizens, creating both equity and efficiency. Education is another pillar of the welfare state. Schooling is free at all levels, from primary through university, and the government invests around 9.3% of GDP in education. This guarantees that every child and adult can learn without financial barriers. By contrast, the United States invests about 6.2% of GDP, the UK around 5.6%, and Germany approximately 4.8%. Norway's commitment ensures a well-educated, highly skilled workforce, giving the country a competitive edge. Norway's social security system is equally robust, covering pensions, unemployment benefits, and disability allowances. Social security contributions make up roughly 18.8% of total labor costs. In comparison, the United States contributes about 15.3% through Social Security and Medicare, the UK between 12 and 13.8% through national insurance, and Germany around 20% split between employer and employee. This substantial investment reflects Norway's dedication to protecting citizens against life's uncertainties. The foundation of Norway's welfare state lies in prudent fiscal management. Taxes and social contributions account for about 41.9% of GDP, funding essential public services while maintaining economic stability. Oil revenues are carefully invested in the government pension fund Global, ensuring that future generations also benefit from Norway's natural resources. When compared internationally, Norway's approach stands out. Sweden and Denmark also invest heavily in social welfare, but Norway's combination of high public investment, universal coverage, and disciplined management of oil wealth sets it apart. Many oil-rich nations, such as Saudi Arabia and Venezuela, struggle to provide even basic social services due to mismanagement or political instability. Emerging economies like China spend less on social welfare, prioritizing rapid economic growth instead. Norway avoids the resource curse, turning oil revenues into a shared national asset rather than allowing wealth to concentrate in the hands of a few. The result is a society that is prosperous, equitable, and resilient, a model that other nations, both developed and resource-rich, can learn from. Interestingly, Norway is not a member of the European Union. Yet, through the European Economic Area Agreement, it enjoys full access to the EU's single market. This arrangement allows Norwegian businesses to trade freely with Europe's largest economic bloc while retaining control over key domestic policies, such as fisheries, oil management, and taxation. By avoiding full EU membership, Norway can protect strategic sectors, regulate its resources prudently, and still benefit from one of the world's largest consumer markets. This balance has been a crucial factor in Norway's economic stability and global competitiveness. Norway, once heavily reliant on oil, is now charting a course toward a sustainable future. The nation's commitment to diversification is evident in its substantial investments in renewable energy and technological innovation. Renewable energy leadership. In 2023, Norway's renewable energy share stood at approximately 75.6%, making it a leader in Europe. This achievement is largely due to the country's abundant hydroelectric resources, complemented by growing investments in wind and solar power. Hydropower alone accounts for about 96% of Norway's electricity generation, ensuring low-emission energy production. Technological innovation and investment. Norway's innovation landscape is thriving, with the country ranking third globally in the MIT Technology Review's Green Future Index as of 2023. In 2023, Norway experienced a 16% increase in climate tech investments, totaling €286 million. This surge underscores Norway's dedication to fostering a robust tech ecosystem that supports sustainable development. Preparing for a post-oil future, the Norwegian Offshore Directorate projects a peak in oil production by 2025, with a subsequent decline due to maturing fields. In response, Norway is focusing on enhancing its renewable energy capacity and technological infrastructure to ensure economic stability and environmental responsibility in the coming decades. Norway's story is a testament to strategic planning, prudent management, and long-term vision. From a nation once struggling with poverty and war, it leveraged its oil discoveries not for short-term gains, but as a foundation for enduring prosperity. The careful investment of oil revenues into the government pension fund Global, combined with a progressive tax system, allowed Norway to build one of the world's most comprehensive welfare states, ensuring universal healthcare, free education, and strong social security for all citizens. But Norway is not stopping at oil. By prioritizing renewable energy, technological innovation, and sustainable development, the country is preparing for a future where fossil fuels play a smaller role. Its investments in hydropower, wind, and climate tech demonstrate a commitment to environmental responsibility and economic resilience. Compared to other oil-rich nations that have struggled with mismanagement and inequality, Norway stands out as a model of responsible resource governance. It shows how wealth, when managed wisely, can be transformed into a thriving, equitable society, one that benefits not just current generations, but the generations yet to come. Norway's journey is a powerful lesson for the world. Prosperity is not just about what a nation possesses, but how it chooses to use it. We'd love to hear from you. Comment below and let us know which topic you want us to explore next.